Hello and welcome to the Wikipedia Weekly Network here, where me and Albin Larsson edit Wikidata live. Hello, Albin. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing great. It's Open Data Day. My tea's a little too hot, but that's it.
All
And
right.
you?
I'm doing great as well. Like Open Data Day, I've been following a couple of hashtags and a few things on YouTube today. So it has been nice, and we will have some extra focus on that today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's a sort of a meta thing, because Wikidata is, of course, open data in itself. And now we're going to take a look in Wikidata, what open data sets we can find there, but also how you can add it and how you can use it as a data set.
Exactly.
But since this is sort of a wider call with this Open Data Day, we published this on Open Knowledge Foundation's website as well. We're going to be try to take it from the very basics and go through how Wikidata works. So if you're new, don't be scared. And if we go too fast, please use the chat to tell us and ask us questions. We will have a look and try to answer anything. We're doing this for you.
And a little bit for ourselves.
Yes, we're doing this because we think it's fun. But of course, we want to. We think it's fun to share our knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm going to start out, and I'm going to head over to this various website, wikidata.org. So if you haven't been there already, it's just this simple address, and you come here, and if you go up to the search bar, you can search different things. And I'm already prepared here, so I'll come to an item on Wikidata, and Wikidata consists of a lot of items. And as you can see here, it is called dataset, but that's only what it's called in English. In Swedish, we call it datamängd, and we have a number of other languages as well. But to keep track of it, this is the ID, which we sort of has the identifier. It's what it is for the item. So we can, independent of what language we start with, can refer to it. And then we also have like a description here, but these are just text fields. So these are, in my opinion, a little bit less interesting than the other things that we can find, where we actually find the structured data. And on this item that describes dataset, we can see it's a subclass. And this first little box is what we call a statement. And this statement has actually two claims in it. It's a subclass of intellectual work, and it's also a subclass of collection, which in turn has a qualifier. It's a collection of data. So here we can see a lot of the different features of how an item in Wikidata works. So this is the subclass of is a property of the item dataset, and the value is what comes next to it. And it can have several different values, and the values themselves can be qualified, which in turn is another property. So yeah. So you can read this as dataset is a subclass of intellectual work. And you see here, it doesn't have any references for now. We're going to add a few references later, but this is how it actually works. And if we scroll down, this one is perhaps a little bit less abstract. An image of the dataset could be this one. I'm not sure, like it's not a canonical, but it's at least an example of it. For other things, it makes more sense. Let's say if we have a person, the portrait picture makes much more sense. Like this is an image of someone. And then we have I think we're up to several thousand different properties now in Wikidata. And you can see like, oh, this is an exact match somewhere else. And then we have some other sort of things that are referring to other Wikimedia projects, how they are using this. And then one very interesting thing is identifiers in other datasets. And that's how we can cross-connect them and keep track of things, which is very interesting. It enables us to do a lot of interesting things like federating queries. We're not going to go into that today, but that's sort of one of the keys for it. And I think around half of all the properties in Wikidata are external identifiers, perhaps even a little bit more.
I think it's even more nowadays.
Yeah. And I think we are over 9,000 properties in total, something like that.
Seems about right.
Yeah, so you can't really keep track of them all in your head any longer. In the beginning of Wikidata, you could, but now it's a little bit of a detective work sometimes when you want to do something.
However, not all properties are for Wikidata. Some are from other Wikimedia projects like Wikimedia Commons,
Yes.
which also uses something like Wikidata that isn't Wikidata.
Yeah. So this is one item, and I'm going to go to a specific data set because we're talking about open data today, and we're going to take a look at how one item about a data set can look like to get some sort of inspiration of. And I'm going to do the simplest thing here, what you can do. I'm not going to do a full-fledged query, but there's even since before Wikibase, which is the extension that enables Wikidata, came to the Wikimedia world, we had this little thing, what links here, which only tells what other things links to this page. So I'm going to click that one and see what we have. And I recognize this one. You can also see that I've already been clicking on this one once. So this is about a data set called Integrated Authority File. And you can see here we have a Swedish label, which actually is the German label because it is comes from the German National Library. And here we can see it has an instance of, because it's one specific data set. It's not a subclass of data sets. It's like this is one exact. So then we can have instance of it. And then perhaps we have a little bit too many, but they might all be true. So I'm not going to change anything for that. And here we have an image, which might make more sense than the other one because this looks like a screenshot from it. We have an inception date. This one actually have a reference. Here we can see how this can be constructed. Very simple, just a reference URL and a retrieve date when someone last looked at it. It can be more complex, but this is certainly enough for someone to verify it. And then we see a few other things. It follows something else. There's some authors for this, an operator, some size. Here we have something interesting. This is some sort of warning flag. Should have one of the following. All right, so this wants a unit of something. And here I think we have a unit because it doesn't have the warning anymore. So if I press edit here, we have piece. So maybe I should just try to show you here how I could edit it. So I'll edit here, and in the unit which says optional, I try to write piece. And it's a unit of measure in archival science, which this is. And I just click there and say publish.
And even this value here is actually a Wikidata item. So
yes,
even the units here are Wikidata items.
Yep. And now the warning disappeared. But now I got another warning, which says, hey, you changed the value here without changing the reference. Was this correct? So this is, and I say, yes, this is correct. I was just cleaning it up.
Right.
And a few more things here. So I think this sort of perhaps gives you an idea of how an item can look like. It always goes from the left side where they have the properties, which always have a value. I say always, but it can have no value. But even that is sort of a value. It's explicit that it has no value. So now I think we are ready to do some real editing and try to actually create a data set in Wikidata from scratch, because I think that's something that you might want to do. And we're going to see the value in that later when you show us what we can do with the things that are in
Exactly.
Wikidata. And I stumbled upon this data set. And unfortunately now the page is in Swedish, but I guess you might recognize the image. It's the global goals. And these are key performance indicators from the Swedish municipalities and regions, or counties perhaps, that have a new data set, and it was just published for the first time in the fall of last year. So this hasn't got an item yet in Wikidata. So we're going to try to create that one. Oh, and this is just where it's announced, and then we can actually find an example over here. So I'm actually going to copy this because this is what the actual title is going to be. And then I'll go back to Wikidata, and also here is a thing one should always do. Try to look it up first. Someone might have been here in the 2 hours since I was looking this up and created it already. And I'll just do a basic search here and see what I get. I get something, but I think this is actually the real sustainable development goals, the global goals. Yes. So
Right.
this is the ones from the United Nations, and we are going to refer to them in some kind of way in our item. So we'll see how we'll do that later. So I'll go to the left and I'll create a new item. And now it wants me to do it in English. I'm going to do it in Swedish since I had a name here in Swedish first, and then we'll see if I'll go back. So I'm going to call it like this exactly. And these are... I'll write a short description in Swedish. And I'm not adding an alias right now. I might do something else later. And I'll click create. And we see here this is a very empty item. There's no English label defined or English description. No statements, just empty here. And if I leave this for now, it might get deleted because someone will find it not notable because it doesn't really tell any, it doesn't justify why it should be in here. Maybe it stays a little bit, or maybe someone tries to contact me because I'm an active user on Wikidata. But if this would have been my first edit, I don't have much time now. So I'm going to try here to add something in English and label. I think Agenda 2030 can be the same. Here's a question. Should I keep the Swedish label in English? It didn't have an English page. And just add a description.
I would probably leave it out instead.
No label at all?
No, it
Or
still
just...
has a label. It's just not a label in English.
Ah, all right. So I'll add key performance indicators. All right. And I'll publish that. Simple. And now here's the first interesting thing. I'm going to add a statement, so I'll just click add, and it suggests me that this might be one of the first two I should consider. And I'm going to go with the instance of, because this is an instance of a dataset. And it is in dataset of, which is the collection of data. we have some other things here in scientific articles, but this one is the correct one. So now it starts to shape a little bit. I want to give someone the sort of idea what's in here. So we'll add that. Oh, or maybe I'll just follow here and see if these suggestions make sense. Because now when I add a data set, Wikibase got some information to work with and can see what other sort of properties do items of this type already have. And here we have a number of very good suggestions. So I'm going to go with publication date first, because that one was actually in here. I think I saw it. Here we have it. So I'll just copy the date from here and see if it, because I have the language
Right.
in Swedish, it didn't, but this one it will get. Now I also have a reference, so now I'll show you how we'll do this. I'll do like the other one, simply by the reference URL. Go back here and copy it, the URL. And now we don't get them. If I save this one and come back, it will give me some suggestions here as well. But I don't want, I want to add the retrieve date. And now this autofills because I have that gadget on. I'm going to start with this. This is good enough. And
Indeed.
publish that. And as you can see here, now I get a little bit more refinement. It changed a little bit here. So because since it had a publication date, it can suggest other more common things. And now it perhaps thinks this is like a scientific article. We have a lot of scientific articles in Wikidata. So it thinks I should add an author name string. I'm not going to do that because I don't have that one. And actually, I think all of these got a little bit worse right now.
Indeed.
So, yeah. So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to say owned by. Or yes, or maintained by.
Yeah, maintained by sounds.
Yes.
Especially if it has an open license.
It unfortunately doesn't.
Oh.
Why did I add this then? This Open Data Day. I was so.
I will make up for that.
Yes. So it has a very strange homemade sort of item license.
Right. Yeah.
Now I'm getting angry with myself why I didn't react on that further. Let's check this out first here. It wasn't there. So usually this database called Collada has open data. Maybe it has still. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. So this one is published by, and I'll copy this. I think there's already an item for this in here.
Indeed. Right.
Ooh, but not an English label. Mm-hmm. Do they have an English name on their website? They do not.
No. Do they have a Wikipedia article?
Mm-hmm.
And we can use Wikidata to check that.
No, they do not.
Right.
But they do have an. So yeah, maybe I just misread this one. Let's come back to that. Because I thought I saw something about non-commercial things, which I don't really like because that makes it non-open data. Of course.
Indeed.
I want to try to connect this to the content of it. So I'm going to say that the main subject here is the global goals. Or let's see. I'm saying the global goals because sustainable development goals is hard to say, but there's an alias for that. And now I'm thinking, can I do this like of Sweden or Swedish municipalities? Would that be
I don't know. I think I would add a second main subject here set to Sweden. Maybe.
not like this?
That works as well. Or even as a second main subject. I think the later might be a little more common from a modeling perspective.
Yes. Yes. You're right there. This sort of gives a little bit more of a semantics about that the data is actually about that, but it might be harder to find. So here's a little bit of a, and as you might realize now, you who watch this and haven't seen Wikidata before, we don't really have a strict data model. We sort of make it up as it goes, but we also try to find and reuse the model within Wikidata. So there's a sort of a Goldilocks zone. You want to express as much as you can, but you don't want to make it too hard.
And
so
for a lot of various items and subject, we have like example items and such to make this easier.
Yes. So I'm just going to publish this one, and then I'm going to add another value for this then.
Exactly.
Municipality of Sweden. Publish that one too. And then we'll see if we have region of Sweden as an item. Might help if I spell it right. Yes, that's the one we want.
Nice.
Because they have both of these administrative subdivisions in it. All right. Now I'm going to show you a little bit of trick here. I'm going to reload the page. And you see it resorts itself in some sort of importance order. But even more importantly, I had turned on the gadget for copying references. So now I can just reuse this one because this page also states that it is about the global goals and municipalities and regions. So we have we can reuse this reference there, there, and there. Very quickly, easy. And I'll actually show you, if you haven't seen it before, under preferences.
If you're signed in.
If you're signed in, yes. For this, you need to sign in. We have this nice little tab called gadgets. And one of the gadgets here is duplicate references.
Yeah.
And that one is very good.
Indeed.
Unfortunately, this entire data set is in Swedish. So that might be good to also enter. Yeah, because that might make some people not want to use it because they might want to use it in an app and Swedish wouldn't make sense for them, even though most of the things in the actual data set is is numbers. But of course, the fields are in Swedish. So this is fairly good metadata, but we haven't yet added a link to the actual data set. Perhaps we should do that.
Indeed.
So this is the canonical page, which is also referenced from here. So I'm going to use this rather strange URL actually for it. So this will be, now is the question, which property should we use, do you think?
I would use official web page for this. And for the author one, I would use describe by URL.
Ah, yes. So this one will, official website is a property that will want the language. So I'll add it here, language of work. It's going to be Swedish as well. Publish that one. And actually they had, now let's see. Here we have an entire manual for this.
Right.
So did we have the manual, or was it called user manual? It still helps to spell. User manual URL. This one is also in Swedish. And then you want to use this as described by?
Yeah. It had a lot of textual content, so.
Yes. Describe that URL. Not sure if this needs the language.
I think so.
But it's always useful since we know it.
Right.
I think these are sort of the basic things. We have maintained by. It might be interesting also. This one was made. The Swedish government gave the assignment to them to do it. So I think commissioned by is a useful one. And I think this was in before our last election, so it will be the first one, Löfven 1 cabinet. And I had a source for that as well. This is the source for that. Oh. Just use reference URL. Retrieved today. Now I actually managed to navigate away from that. And here I want to do something, a little bit of a trick, because unfortunately in Sweden we have the same domain for the government, whoever is in government, and as soon as it changes, all the content usually disappears. And we have an election coming up in just a year. So I'm going to go to the Internet Archive here and try to save it there for posterity. Because it would be nice if people come in the winter of 2022 and this link still works. So I'm going to try to save the page here, see if it is in a way that works. It's not the nicest URL either. But it worked.
Great.
Good. So copy the link location there. Go back here and add an archive URL. There we go. And then we can save that.
Nice one.
Let's see if we can figure out here the copyright status. So the copyright status, first, it's quite simple because it's copyrighted. But then it might have another license. So we'll start with that. And perhaps it's not so fun for you to actually see me dig for that. So perhaps I'll hand over to you to to start querying, and
querying for a bit of.
Yeah, and I'll go dig for the proper value, because what I want to add before I hand it over is I want to add copyright license and add a value for this, but I don't know this right now.
Right.
But I hope we can add either CC BY or CC 0, because I know other data in it is CC 0.
Right. And as you mentioned that, we will actually have a bit of a look into Wikidata and what datasets it contains, and in particular what open datasets it contains. So if you are on wikidata.org and wants to use its data, there is a great tool for this, because everything in Wikidata does not only link to each other, but it's also all expressed in RDF, and it's all licensed under CC0. So in the main menu here, we got something called Query Service. And this is an amazing tool which allows you to access everything in Wikidata, all its data, and you can get all types of various data from examples, or you can write your own queries here in SparkQL. And I'm gonna show you how to first grab all datasets in Wikidata. Then we're gonna check their license and maybe get a bit statistics on it and see how we can use that information. So I'm gonna start writing something here, but I'm also gonna press Control Space to get a bit of autocomplete here. And I'm gonna pick one. It adds a bit of boilerplate. It selects two variables, item and item label. Item label is a bit of a magic one in Wikidata because it uses a service here, which I won't go into, but having this already entered for me is very helpful. But I want to select that item we have defined. And I want that item to have the statement. And again, Control Space, and you can autocomplete everything because, as Jan said, we got over 9,000 properties. And here I want to say that it should be instance of, just as the first statement that Jan added. And I want it to be an instance of a Wikidata item, which should be data set. There we go. I did not write it exactly the way it was written, but it auto-completed anyway. This should be enough for us to select all datasets. So I'm going to click this round button here. And we see that there is 1,610 datasets described in Wikidata. The first one listed here is actually the one Jan looked at, the German authority files from their national library. And we got all kinds of things here. I even imagine we got Wikidata somewhere here. We got a similar thing from the Finnish National Library, and so on. But let's select the ones with licenses defined, so we can see a bit about what their copyright status is. So I'm gonna ask for another property on these items, VDT property. I'm gonna autocomplete it and say copyright license, and I want to select it. So I take that value and put it into a variable called license, like that. And I want to select it up here. I'm gonna select both license and license label. Label essentially uses this service tone here to say that we do not only want the ID, the QID, but we also want something that we can read, like its label. And it actually picks a label from various languages for you in case it's do not have an English one. And then we see that this is a major subset. So the majority of datasets do not have a license even defined, because here we only got 111 datasets. But we can see that we got Creative Commons CC BY essentially, imported 3.0. We got open license, which I think is a CC BY-like license from the French government, but we can check that out because we have the QID here. So you can head over here. Exactly. So it's CC BY, similar to CC BY used by the French government. And same over here. We got CC0 quite a bit. Even more. We got the Norwegian specific one. Also, I think it's very similar to CC BY. We got the open government license, which I believe is something similar, but for the UK. So we see a bit of a pattern emerging. But let's actually get some statistics on this. Because we can actually do quite a bit of computation within this query tool itself. So if I want to, essentially I want to count which licenses are the most common ones. And I can say that up here in my select one, that I want to count license as count. And I still want to select license and license label separately. And I need to define here that I want to group this by license, followed by license label as a fallback. And yeah, let's start with this. And let's see what encounter word license column. I didn't say group by. Right. Something like that. 23 licenses. We got a count here and we got the license. So we got this French open license, which is set on 14 datasets. We got the CC BY 4.0 international on 8, CC0 57. But we can make this a little easier to read actually by ordering it. Order by, descending, and count. So we should then get CC0 right on the top. It's the most common one, followed by the French open license and CC BY 4.0. Right. And we've got the open database license, right? Public domain here, it's a little odd. We also see something here. This is a Wikidata blank node. In this particular example, it's actually an open dataset that has its value set to unknown value.
Yeah, and the other one might be some value.
Right. Exactly. So they might be different in that type of way. They might also be the same because this type of blank node ID is unique per item.
Ah, yes. And some value and unknown value is the same. Yes.
Yeah. So we see CC0 super common. I think actually we can visualize this. So Wikidata has a bunch of built-in visualization tools like a map. It's very common. You might have seen it around the internet. But I'm interested in a bar chart because I think that would make a lot of sense for this data. So we cannot really see it. It goes a little bit outside. CC0 has a short name here, so it makes for a great example. And we can see that it actually does this automatically. It knows that count is a numeric value, and we also got this textual value. So it can actually create this type of bar chart for ourselves. It's incredibly useful, and you have got everything from graphs here to maps. As I said, you can have an image grid if it's image data and so on. I'm gonna head over back to the table because I actually want to explore this data a little more to see we can not only query this data to visualize it and reuse it, we can actually query this data to find errors in this data itself. For example, copyright license being set to public domain seems a bit odd.
Yeah, there might be special cases where it's correct, but it's a bit odd.
It's a little odd, so we're gonna see that. So I'm gonna open the query service again in another window. Like that, and I copied that item to my clipboard. And I'm just typing out this rather quickly. And now I want all items. Let's see if this is good enough or if we get a lot of things that aren't dataset. With this set as its copyright license. Oops. Copyright license.
Yes. No, that should probably always be wrong because that would be copyright status.
Exactly. So public domain should usually be the copyright status of it.
All right. Let's see what you get.
And I'm pretty sure we're going to get a little too much here because I imagine yes. So we got a bunch of items that I assume aren't datasets because copyright license is of course something that could be used on a lot of various types of works, like articles, books, and all types of things. So we're going to add another requirement here being that it should also be a dataset. So instance of dataset. And all of these queries might look very odd and unfamiliar to you, but in general, using the examples and getting like cats, and then you change the value for cat to datasets, and you're already getting started. So we have limited ourselves to dataset. We get 2, what we expected. So I can open this in Wikidata and have a look. So this is a survey from 2016. I imagine that would be in copyright. If it's not, so we actually even see that here that it has a warning saying that this statement has some issues. And it actually says it straight out here that the value for copyright license should not be public domain. What I imagine has happened here, we can see that it has a US government link as well, is that this is actually, because it's produced by the US government, it's in the public domain. So that's its copyright status, but it's not the license.
So you can just move that value?
Is that the tool I have? Yes. So again, just like Jan showed you, he had a gadget, community build tool essentially that he can turn on in his settings for copying references. I have something similar for moving claims or statements. And I want to move it to the same entity.
And it's P6216.
P6216. Thank you,
yes.
Jan. And I'm going to say I want to move it. I want to essentially replace it instead of just copying it. And I should be able to reload this to see the change. And we can see that I moved it and its reference to copyright status, and we have this warning gone. So that's one. Let's see if we can do the second one as well. It appears to be some list related to Japan. It's actually by a large library that, among other things, does a cultural heritage aggregator. it has had some of its data imported to Wikidata. Let's see, this appears to be in English, the reference. Let's see if I can see that if it has a copyright license or if it's actually in the public domain. So it's no longer a US government agency, so I can't say for sure that it's in the public domain actually. So I want to verify this. Let's see if I can actually search for public domain. Or lists are in the public domain. You can use the lists freely. Right? I think that's enough for me to being able to change it to copyright status. Assuming that it's an authoritative source, which it seems to be because it has the official link, so to say. So I'm gonna move that as well to P6216.
No, to the same entity.
Yes. But to P6216, I think. Right, and I want to move this as well.
Unfortunately, no autocomplete in that field yet.
No, as we mentioned, this type of gadgets that you can enable in your preferences or settings are community built, so they have some drawbacks. Right. Both of those two are done. I'm gonna see if we can take a stab at another one or two. This one is very interesting actually. It has it's set to open data. So I'm gonna see if we can do something about that, because it doesn't feel right.
No. So meanwhile you were doing this, I actually found a source for my dataset for it being open data, but not what license.
Right.
So it has been commissioned with that it should be open data, and it is in the user manual, but I can't find the exact license, which is a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, it's surprisingly common actually with open data that it's claimed to be open data, but you can never find a real license.
Yeah.
I think this should be good enough in this example to find it. Yes.
The only one. Entire Wikidata.
So we got a French data set here. From what I believe is the government agency for statistics and things. And yes, it has copyright license, open data, and we can again see that we got a warning here saying that an entity with copyright license should also have a statement for copyright status. But most of all, it has this value type constraint, which says that values of copyright license statements should be instances of license, but open data currently isn't, and in this case shouldn't be. So, right, and it's actually a publication date on the copyright license as well. And retrieve, which should usually be in a reference. Interesting. Let's see if we can find it out on the official website. I'm afraid my French is close to non-existent, but maybe we get some hints. If it wants to load for me, let's again, actually Wikipedia uses this, for example, for the language links you see in the side on Wikipedia. So we actually got a Wikipedia article in French here as well, which I also want to check. That loaded a lot quicker. Right, it actually seems to be a bit of an open data portal, more like it. Because it has various domains, which for me is an indicator that we can actually find various content here. Here we go, actually.
543 results.
Yeah, so this appears to be search in some specific categories here in this open data portal. So they are open data but might have various license, I imagine.
Possibly, yeah.
So I imagine one would like to change the instance off. But I'm actually gonna leave this to someone else. I feel like someone that knows French should be in a much better position than me to take a stab at this.
I feel bold enough to change it to Open Data Portal because I know we have that an item like that. So I'll just do it immediately.
Okay. Even if it appears to be a subset of Open Data Portal?
Well, it's better than just dataset.
Okay.
So yeah, someone can still go change it, but we improved it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a wiki. Slowly but surely. I wonder if there was something else I wanted to check out here. Yes, it's this called Open Data Commons, because I'm pretty sure this is actually a project from the Open Knowledge Foundation and not a license in itself. So I'm gonna try to identify that item and see what can be done. So we've got a crowdsourced dataset, which official website is on GitHub, and it has Creative Copyright License, Open Data Commons. But let's see here what this is. It says it's a public license maintained by the Open Knowledge Foundation. But let's see what the German Wikipedia says about it. Open Data Commons is a project from Open Knowledge Foundation, from the Open Knowledge Foundation. And it seems to have produced 3 different licenses, but it's not a license in itself. So it feels like we could give that item actually a bit of love here. In particular, changing it from being a public license to a project. You're skeptical?
Well, it might be so. Yes. All right. Yes. So there are 3 different licenses, and they're the Open Data Commons Open Database license, the Open Data Commons Attribution license, and the Open Data Commons Public Domain Dedication. So yes. So this is probably a project. Yes.
Is it a project and a group of licenses?
I think you can go with project.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, I felt so.
I think we had the attribution license in Wikidata.
Yeah, I'm sure the UDBL is there.
Yes,
because I mean, because it's rather large. I mean, it's used by OpenStreetMap and so on.
Yes, and if you try Open Data Commons Attribution, I think we have that one as well.
Right.
So I think that was a good change.
I think I still want to have main subject here to still keep that connection to public license. Or even I think I'm gonna go with this because it was the instance of prior to my change. But I imagine that because we got this official website here, I wonder if it has a license stated on GitHub, so we can actually update this as well
to the exact one.
Yes. So we got this button here, View License. Is made available under the Open Database. Yeah. And it's actually also under the Database Contents License, it seems like. Any rights in individual contents of the database. I imagine this is why someone added the project there, because it's has 2.
Yes.
But let's add both of them, hoping that both of them are in Wikidata. This one we know
the first one is. Yes.
Right. I'm gonna edit this straight ahead. And I'm pretty sure this is it, based on its description. Oh, it complains. Yes, it should also have a copyright status. We will add that as well. Let's see if we got this Orchard one, which would be database contents license. It appears to be there. I'm gonna just click on it as well to see if it's correct. It's the one by the Open Knowledge Foundation. Seems about right. Right, and for this I actually want a reference. I feel it's... Oh, mine is broken. Okay, I will add a reference later on. Or reload this page to begin with.
You had to add smart reference also. Is that another gadget?
Yes, it's something for another day, so to say.
All right.
Okay, I have broken it on my side.
Yeah.
I'm writing gadgets myself, this smart reference, so it's not always... Sometimes it's breaking things.
Yeah.
There is a reason you have to enable them in your settings. But let's add copyright status, because if it has that type of license, we know that it's in copyright.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I definitely gonna go ahead and add like a reference here, because it's such an important value, I believe. It's instance of crowdsourcing. Okay, that's out of scope for me for now. But it was a pretty good one there, because we was also able to change the Orchard one to a project. So I'm just trying here to show like how we can try to use the type of essentially looking at the quantity of the data to find errors. We can query for this in various types of subjects on Wikidata. I think we did a very similar exercise when it came to open source software under licenses, that when it started to only be one of them, we were in a bit of an indication that it might not be what it seems like.
Yeah.
We use a similar technique in all various kinds of areas. I know I use it a bit for Glacier data and such.
It's very... The thinking is very reusable, and the method. And I guess one of the things we could go with here is possibly also to try to do... It might be a little bit too deep for this one, but if we wanted to find more data sets, going with the property path and see if there's some different kinds of data sets that are subclasses of data sets, because since the modeling is open in Wikidata, you're never sure if you're getting everything in your first try.
Yeah, we might have an instance of open dataset, and to capture that, we would need to...
An open data set, yes.
Yeah. To capture that, we would need to look at, give me all data sets and everything that might be a subset of data sets.
Yes.
There is plenty of examples under the examples put on there that will make sure if you're new to Wikidata, you...
Can you just show in the results from a query the different things you can actually... how you can use the results of the query? Because you have the code and the download things there, which might be interesting today.
Yes. So we got a couple of interesting things here. We got code if someone wants to reuse this data. Here you can embed it, but you can actually have an example of how you download it and execute the query in, for example, various programming languages. But I can also share this with everyone, so that everyone that wants to use this can do so. And this link will go straight to the query, where not only can you get the code for it if you want to build an application upon it or something like that. But you can also download it. It has a ton of various formats like CSV and JSON and so on.
Yeah. And everything that you can get out of the query service itself is CC0. So
Yes.
that's why it becomes this meta entanglement of data set within a data set.
Indeed. And I'm actually going to show off that quickly as well. No matter what you need. For example, here we got a map of hospitals. Wikidata got that as well. Let's just show it. Oh, it has a lot of hospitals. 40,000. That map might take a while to render because it freezes my browser.
All right.
I'm gonna stop it. Okay. It very much showcases the potential in this, and I'm quickly gonna switch away from that tab.
Before everything stops.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, so I think that's more or less what we wanted to show you today. Both how you can sort of make your own data set more reusable by also adding it to Wikidata. We didn't talk about notability today, but in general, you could say if it's a data set published by a public organization, it should be notable. Try to think about, I would say, where you draw the lines for dataset, because that might be a little bit blurry from time to time. So don't try to make it too small and modular, even though it might feel good, because it might also make it very hard to find. But try to go for a little bit of a more of a collection of it, if it's possible. And possibly for some very specific datasets, you might also want to import the actual dataset into Wikidata, but I think it's more important to actually add an item about the dataset before it, because that makes it findable.
And even if you do import a dataset to Wikidata, it's great to still say that this is stated in this dataset, which is also represented in Wikidata.
Yes.
But as Jan said, I would personally not go ahead and import like an entire data portal, for example, the Swedish database portal. I wouldn't import that in Wikidata as it is, but I might cherry pick the most important data sets and add them to Wikidata.
Yeah, and I guess where I would start to think about importing it is if I could imagine there being connection further on, like if it's only if it not only values, like the one that I showed first was just a data over a series of years, which wouldn't have other links to it. But if there were things that shows that this had a connection to another concept for a certain period of time or something like that, then it would make more sense to actually add it to Wikidata, because then you can query for it over time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So I think that's all for today. For if you're a new viewer, we usually do this more or less once a week, but not every Saturday, but most Saturdays. Next Saturday we will do it. So if you're here the same time and same place, you can follow us along, and then we might showcase some less basic stuff. We usually go about either a topic or a tool or something like that. Do you have an idea already?
Yeah, I already know what I'm gonna do next week. So usually, like today, we do something about an awareness day of some kind. So I'm actually gonna use the Wikidata query service to do a calendar for us to show the upcoming awareness days that we might be interested in. So we might pick up the ones which are the next upcoming awareness days in the space of environment or open data and so on, to see that we capture them and make something about them.
That's also very meta.
Yeah, indeed.
I believe I will take a look. I think I mentioned it to you last week, but I already forgot it. Oh no. I'll have to figure it out.
Yeah.
It was some kind of new tool that I've been starting to use, but right now my mind blanks.
Right.
Yeah. But until then, until next week, happy editing.
Keep on querying.